We can then go and rename it to ground. And we can simply drag on the blue arrow here to move it over. Something like that, just so it starts about at the same point as our camera. Then let's create another object. So right click, go 3D object and then cube. Again, let's reset the transform so it's centered on our scene. We can then drag on this green arrow to move it up. Let's again hit F to focus on it. And we can see that we now have our new cube here standing on the ground. This cube is going to be our player. So let's go ahead and rename him to player. And let's also make him a bit more visible, because right now everything is pretty boring white. To do that, we need to assign a material to our player, and we create a new material in the project panel. So let's right click down here, go create, and then material. We'll name this material our player and then mat for material, but that's optional. Let's hit enter. Now we can adjust different properties on this material, stuff like how metallic it should be, the smoothness of the material, and the color up here. So we'll make this some kind of bright red. And what we can do is then simply drag our player mat onto our cube, and you can see it updating in real time. We'll simply let go and it's applied. And any changes that we now make to this material are going to update for our player. I think our camera is a bit far away, so let's also select our camera and move it a bit closer. Again, we can move it over by simply dragging on this arrow, move it up a little bit, and that looks a lot better. So now if we were to hit play and actually run our game, not much happens. That's mostly because we haven't done any programming yet, and so we can't really control the player, but we also need to add some physics into our game. Right now, if we exit play mode, take our player, drag him up here, and hit play again, he's just going to float in the air. He's not falling down. The reason why is that we need to tell this game object to interact with the Unity physics system. To do that, we go out of play mode and add a new component. In our case, we want to add the physics rigid body component. Now when we hit play, we should see that our cube falls to the ground, and indeed it does. Right now it falls in a bit boring way, so let's try and rotate our cube a bit to make it more interesting. To do that, we switch to the rotation tool. Notice how all of the different tools are up here. Right now we have the move tool selected. We can also shift to rotation, scale, and then this one is for manipulating 2D graphics, which allows you to easily do all of the different things at the same time. You can always switch between these really quickly by using Q, W, E, R, and T. So we're going to press E to rotate, and I'm just going to kind of rotate it in a random way here. So if we now hit play, he's going to fall down, and we can now see that he has a lot more advanced physics applied than we were able to see before. So I'm just going to undo that rotation by pressing Ctrl Z, and I'm also going to move him down here. We can also try duplicating him. So let's press Ctrl D to duplicate, and let's move this one up and over a bit and see how they interact with each other. Awesome. So one really important thing to understand is what is making these objects behave this way. And the answer is, of course, components. So if we now exit out of play mode and select the player here, we can see that he has all of these different components. The first one is something that you will see on all game objects called the transform component, which just keeps track of where the game object is in space, how it's rotated, and its size. You can see we can adjust all of these, and the game object will be adjusted accordingly. And also, if we go ahead and drag on the game object, you will see the transform component updating. The rest of them, though, are all optional. We have the mesh renderer down here, which is responsible for drawing the object on the screen. If we go ahead and disable that, it's actually going to disappear. It's still in here, you can see it's still in the hierarchy, and it still has this green box and we can move it around, but until we